Global Publishing presents Cash Flow with Ron LeGrand.
Good morning, class. Good morning. And welcome to the Pretty House Cash Flow System. We are going to spend the next 3 days going through the Pretty House business step by step, piece by piece, until we know everything there is to know about it, at least enough to know out there and get out there and get us a bunch of checks coming in quickly. We have a lot of information to cover, and I'm going to go through the manual systematically, try to stay in order so that you can follow me. And the manual is situated such that, for the most part, it's in the exact same order that we will be implementing the things that you learn from it. Let me start by saying that this manual is copyrighted. The CDs you are listening to are copyrighted and trademarked. My name is federally trademarked and is evidenced by the first page. I take that very seriously. You may not copy this manual. You may not copy these CDs. You may not even copy them and give them to a friend to listen to. You may loan yours to a friend. I would not suggest you do. You may never get it back. Copying the manual in any way is a violation of my copyright rights, and I will enforce those rights to the hilt. I have a lot of folks stealing my stuff, and I have full-time people on staff to monitor the entire internet and track those folks down, and I do take my rights very seriously. Now that pre-screening speech is over, let's turn to the page that says Pretty Houses, Cash Flow Systems, What We Will Cover. During the entire process of this system, I've literally got it all in here. Starting with the step-by-step process of acquiring properties, how we do it today, the things that are working. We've eliminated a lot of the things that are working but not working as well. There's only a couple of things you need to do to attract all the prospects that you want into your life, and I'm going to go over the best of the best in our system. What you'll need to do business, and what you'll need to know to do that business, and where it will work, and where it won't work, and how you make money, and advantages and the disadvantages of being in the business, because there are some, there always are. What are your target properties? When are they not target properties? What conditions should they be in? Good, bad, or ugly. In the case of this system, they're all going to be in good condition. How to get people to call you, how to pre-screen them quickly at lightning speed, how to deal with the prospects and not the suspects and get the suspects out of your life, and who to make offers to and what to offer to them when you do pick them out from the herd. We're going to go through that entire process of what's a deal and what's not a deal, and how to instantly spot whether it's good, bad, or ugly, or a waste of your time, and then what to do with it thereafter. High-priced houses, low-priced houses. We're going to talk about all price ranges, no matter where you live, in North America or any other country that buys houses similar to the way we do. And I have students all over the world now in countries that I can't even pronounce or didn't even know exist before I met them. Common mistakes when buying and selling. And then we're going to get into the selling process, step by step, how to attract buyers, how to pre-screen them quickly, how to limit your risk, pick only the best, get the most money out of them after you put them in the property, or how to cash out of the property immediately, how to do it quickly, not normally, quickly. What agreements to use for both buying and selling, what few there are. We'll go through those agreements, just enough for you to know how to use them without getting bored to tears going through every single line that you'll probably never read more than once in your whole life anyway. And why I don't want you using very many of them, and why I want you to get professional help to guide you through the system so that you don't make mistakes that keep you awake at night. The system will also include a section on buying defaulted paper and how to release liens from properties. It'll also deal with short sales on how to discount liens after you buy properties so you can build free equity in houses the day after you take title to them. And we're going to take you all the way through the closing system from the beginning to the end. We're going to talk about how to get the properties closed, whether they be on a lease option or with seller financing, or whether they be for cash. We're going to discuss seller financing, getting in, getting out, the tools to do that with, and just everything you need to do 80% of the business of buying and selling pretty houses. This system is about pretty houses. We're not going to talk about buying a junker here. We won't be discussing the formula or renovating properties or hiring contractors of any of that nature, because by and large, we don't do that in the pretty house business. In the pretty house business, our job is to locate houses that need little or no work, usually coming with debt or creating debt, turn them around, exiting from them quickly without doing renovation by either seller financing, lease optioning, or cashing out, or in fact moving in to one every once in a while. On the next page, you'll find my motto, my credo, my way of life as your headline. It says, "The less I do, the more I make," which incidentally happens to be a trademarked phrase. That phrase means a lot to me, and it should mean a lot to you. And in fact, you should work to make it become your way of life. Because until you do, the most you're ever going to accomplish out of this business or any other business is a good living. It's really not hard to make a good living in today's marketplace. Anybody can make a good living. It's hard, however, to get filthy, stinking rich. And my motivation for teaching today and for continually working with students is to take them from an ordinary income and an ordinary life into mega wealth, a path that I've personally taken and feel qualified to teach. From a mechanic twisting wrenches, broke, bankrupt, clueless, lost, 35 years old when I began in the business, to a mega millionaire, scratching and clawing, taking years and years and years and years to learn what will take you weeks or months. Someone who's been down the road and knows what'll work and what won't work, but probably more importantly, brought thousands of students with him to the point to where now they have become teachers, and now they bring students with them, and on and on and on. The less I do, the more I make is the foundation of the ability to crank up your income in any business on autopilot, allow the revenue to come in without you being personally involved in your business day in and day out, or at least not have it suck up your life. I'm going to implement that into the real estate business as I go through this system. We're not going to talk about how to find a place to go to work, or how to find a business that'll suck up our lives, or how we should be spending our 12-hour days, since we only have to work half a day now that we're self-employed. I'm not interested in anybody listening to these CDs or anybody in this room finding a business that consumes all of their energy and all the time they should be spending with others and all of the time they should be using to do things to give back to others. This system does not need to be tested. It has been used many, many times. It needs to be activated. And I'm hereby putting all of our listeners on notice. You have 90 days from the date you get this system to make a mess. You have 90 days to get acclimated to the system, after which time I expect you to start using the system, because I know full well no one's going to use it right out of the box. Coming from a lifetime of spending more time making less money, going into a lifetime of spending less time making more money is not an easy transition. I'm going to give you 90 days to make that transition. After that 90 days is over, I'm going to be personally coming to your home. Or not. And asking you how much of all that crap you've been doing was a waste of your time. And of course, we all know that most of the things we do every day are a waste of our time. So I'm encouraging you to allow yourself the freedom to do whatever you want every day by forcing yourself to implement the less I do, the more I make into your lifestyle. And that simply means you got to quit doing the same old stupid things day in and day out that don't do a thing to help you get rich, but in fact keep you from that point. Some of you listening to these CDs and some of you in this room are already rich. Some of you are very, very rich. None of us, not one of us, are the best we can be. Nobody in this room or nobody out there listening has done what they can do or reached their full potential. And we all need to work on the less I do, the more I make, including myself. I will tell you that I've learned over the years that the harder you work and the more time you invest, the less money you make. And I know many folks are not going to agree with me on that one because it just doesn't make sense. See, we were born and raised to go out, work hard, be productive, be good citizens, put in the time, pick up a check, and go home and spend the time we have that we have not used to make a living with our families. I'm here to tell you that that's counterproductive. Today, we have to focus hard on spending as little time as possible so that we can spend more time doing what we want, and that is not the way we were raised. We weren't raised, and in fact, many of us feel guilty when we actually get to the point to where we do free up our life. We feel like we ought to go to work because that's what we've been doing all of our lives. We feel bad because, golly, I'm getting out of bed today and I don't have to report to someone. I'm ashamed. But there's good news. You'll get over it. You will either spend the rest of your life thinking or work for those who do. Most people spend the rest of their lives working, not thinking. I'm going to go through the systems that will allow you to think and do very little work. You're going to fight me on them. Some of the things that I'm going to ask you to do, you're going to have a difficult time putting in place, most of you. Some of you will get it, and you'll get it quick. And you'll just have blind faith that if I ask you to put it in place, it's for good reason. And the reason is because it works. The systems that I've built took a lot of years to put in place. It took a lot of doing the wrong things to get to the right things. And it took an awful lot of polling of an awful lot of students around the country to make sure that the right things were nationwide, not just in one area exclusive. And the things we're going to discuss work all over North America and beyond. So please, get it out of your head. If you're listening to these CDs right now, be because you live in some particular area that this won't apply to you, or because you live in some particular price range that this won't apply to you. None of that is true. We have successful people all the way from the high-priced market of San Francisco down into the low-priced markets around the United States and beyond. All the way up through Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Caribbean, and I don't even know where else. The truth is, wherever there are people who live in homes, there will always be people who need to get out of those homes and others who need to get in. And whenever that's the case, there's plenty for you to do wherever you go, whenever you decide to crank up the machine. And when I started in 1982, the prime rate was 18% interest. You couldn't give away a real estate license. In fact, they were giving them away. They were exiting from the business at a rapid rate because they couldn't make a living. Somehow I bought 23 houses my first 6 months in business, not having a clue what I was doing. Sold every single one of them. And since I've bought well over 1,600 and still do it today. And there's one thing I learned in my 25 plus years, and that is this. People always have to have a place to live, and you will not squelch the American dream of home ownership, regardless of what's going on outside of our control. Whether the interest rates are up or down, stock market up or down, buyer's market or seller's market, good times, bad times, Democratic or Republican, at peace or at war, people are always going to have a place to live. And when you figure out that your job is simply to remove those sellers who want to work with you and replace them with buyers who want to work with you, your job becomes very easy. Figure out what you can do to get them out and get them in and pick up a great big fat check. Now when you can do that, using very little of your time and resources, you're building a business that's unsurpassed by anything I've ever seen. And I've got a lot of businesses. And I will continue to do businesses for various reasons. But I haven't seen one yet that overpowers the ability of real estate to produce massive wealth in such a short period of time, along with income. Here's a list of simple tasks that you should be working on that'll put you in that position of autopilot. Number one, you got to crank up the buying machine so it's hands off with almost none of your work. Then you got to set up an answering service to capture the calls and forward you that information. You will not be answering the phone for fear of personal harm by me. You must then learn to pre-screen out the junk, sift through the massive pile of crap, which is most of the stuff you will get, so that you can get through the few pearls that will make you filthy, stinking rich. And then you must get those buyers located and get them to your attorney to get them closed in some form and get a check and get out of it as fast as humanly possible. If you do these steps the right way, you won't need more than 8 hours a week to implement, activate, and perfect this magnificent business of buying and selling pretty houses. And I'm going to tell you, if you're spending 8 hours a week, honestly, truthfully, you're probably wasting 4 of those. So your objective from this day forward is to get your business down to where you're not spending more than 8 hours a week totally involved in buying and selling houses. And I'm going to give you 90 days to get to that point. 90 days to get acclimated, 90 days to set up the systems. It don't take 90 days, but I'm also helping the procrastinators. 90-day deadline. By that time, I want your business down to no more than 8 hours a week. And when the next 90 days after that, I want you to start working on getting it down to below 8 hours a week. Because the less hours you can force yourself to put into it, the more efficient your business will run. Because now you're systemized and you're automated. And by the time we get through, you'll see why and how you can do that in less than 4 hours a week, and why most successful students are doing just that. What you need to do business. You will need a fax machine in your home, one that is not interfered with by any other device, such as a computer. You will need a fax machine that no person has to answer. And in fact, when somebody faxes to your number, they should only hear beep and nothing else. Because you have to have an open communication line with those who want to send you stuff at their discretion. They do not want your kid to answer the telephone. I'm one of them. If I fax you something, I do not want to communicate with anybody at that time. I want to punch a button and be done. Make sure that you are communicatable 24 hours a day by fax. If you want to go to e-fax, you can do that. But just make sure that nothing blocks that communication. People are going to want to send you stuff, and the fax machine is not dead. Email does not replace fax. It's still very viable in our society. You're going to need a digital camera. A digital camera. The days of the Polaroid are over. It's now digital time. Transportation would be good. A telephone. And you're going to need 3 telephone numbers minimum to operate successfully in our business. You're going to need one for you to use for your own personal business. Not personal, but your own business. And this is outside of your home. So if we're talking about you being in your home, you're going to need a personal line in your home plus at least 3 others. A personal line for your family. Then you need a business line that you do not take calls from buyers or sellers, that you can use for your business, for all the things you want to do. And then you're going to need a buying number and a selling number. That's 4 telephone numbers you need. Plus you're going to need a fax number and probably an internet number. Maybe the same number, but you're still going to need that number. So let's don't kid ourselves. If we're going to be in business, let's act like it. Go out and get ourselves a handful of telephone numbers. You're certainly going to need one dedicated to buyers and sellers. The rest of it, mix and max any way you want. But buyers and sellers are critical. You do not want anything interfering with a number that a seller calls you on, because soon you're going to see you're not going to personally take that call. And the same is true with a buyer. And you do not want those calls going to the same location. You're going to need a cell phone. Today's society, it's kind of hard to work without one. You're going to need a little bit of paperwork, which I'm going to go through in this system. It's not much, and there's very few pieces of paper you're going to fill out in our system, but still, they are critical. They're the tools of your trade. A few bucks for binder deposits, and a few bucks to spend on lead generating. Yes, it's actually going to cost a few bucks to go generate some leads. Doesn't have to, but what the heck. This is the real business. It's worth coming up with a few bucks and spending it to crank it up and do it right, instead of starting on a shoestring. Truthfully, everything we do is a shoestring budget compared to any other business, because we're going to be spending hundreds, maybe a few thousand, not hundreds of thousands, to start and grow our business. And of course, you're going to need a proper training, and there's only two ways to get that: the easy way and the hard way. Fortunately, if you're listening to these CDs, you've chosen the easy way. Unfortunately, for those who aren't, they've chosen the hard way. If you're a man, you're going to do it the hard way regardless. There's nothing anybody can do to stop you. It's testosterone. You've got it. I've got it. We were born with it. It's not our fault. There's nothing we can do about it. You're going to listen to these CDs and you're still going to go do it your way. Be pre-warned, I know that, and there's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to show you the right way. You're going to implement. You're going to make the round wheel rounder because you have to. It's your destiny to do so. When you get through with your way, plug the CDs back in, come back to my way. Then we'll start making some real money together. But go ahead and get it out of your system, gentlemen, and get it over with. If I've got it in this system, it's for good reason. It's because it works, not because I made it up to fill up a book. But I'm a man too, and I know nothing could possibly work as well as I could make it work. You'll need to know how to get sellers to call, how to pre-screen them, how to structure the offers, how to attract the buyers, and how to get them to the closing table. So that's what we're going to go through systematically. There are 3 ways for you to lose in my world. Number 1, you can write a big check. If you write a big check, you can lose a big check. Don't write big check, can't lose big check. It's not rocket science. There will become times when you want to write a check. And I have no problem with you writing a check if one or both of these items are in place. Number 1, you get a lot of free equity in exchange for that check. If you don't get free equity for a check to buy a house, don't buy the house. If you don't get free equity, you're not buying the house. If you do, you're doing it your way, not Ron's way. See you when you get back. We're going to get all the houses we want with free equity. We have no reason to buy them without free equity. Secondly, when we write a check, we want to make sure we understand how we're going to get a bigger check back quickly than the one we wrote, and plus free equity. So if those 2 things are present, I get free equity and enough of it to make me want to write the check, and I get my check back quickly with a larger check, okay, write the check. But the minute you write the check, you're at risk. Don't write the check, you're not at risk. Don't ever forget that, because the minute you do, you're going to take a seminar. Second way to lose, guaranteeing debt. If you're going to violate one of my rules, violate the check deal. Don't violate this one. Because the minute you guarantee debt, you risk 3 things. You risk your credit, you risk your assets, and you risk your marriage. None of which are worth risking to buy a single-family house. I would suggest to you that you protect your credit for those times when you're going to need it to make the large money, not the small money. You can make all the money in single-family houses you want without using your credit. And in fact, I suggest that's exactly how you do it. The minute you start tying up your credit and bogging down your financial statement with loans from banks to buy houses, you become a lesser credit risk, not a better. Some people are under the impression that with all these loans in your name and all these properties and all this so-called equity that you look good to banks. In reality, the exact opposite is true. The more single-family house loans you have on your record, the worse you look to lenders. The closer you are to bankruptcy, in their opinion. If you have a lot of personally guaranteed debt on your financial statement now for single-family houses, you might want to be asking yourself, isn't it time for me to clean this mess up and start preparing myself for when I really need my credit? If you're listening to these CDs, you probably know that I'm in the commercial world very heavily, and many of my students are following. And over the years, past couple of 3 years alone, we've purchased over $1 billion worth of commercial projects, some of which I had to use my credit. But when I use my credit, it produces millions, not thousands, in return for that credit. Or I don't use my credit. Suggest that you start thinking about the next level every single time you go down to the bank to borrow money to buy a single-family house. If your intent is to go buy that house and to quickly exit that house and to pay off that loan, And to use that credit is only a means to a very short end. And you're skilled enough to know that that end is near for that property, and you're not just wishing and hoping, then by all means, use your own best judgment. There are times when you may want to use your credit to produce a very, very large check. But what bothers me about people using their credit is they go out and they borrow the money, they refinance, they spend the money, the debt's long term, the debt keeps getting paid, the money's gone, and the pile just keeps getting deeper, and the vortex keeps swirling and swirling and swirling. And we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and we're living off of borrowed money. Cannot live off of borrowed money. There must be a thing called profit for business to sustain itself. Living off of borrowed money is only a means to an end that's going to turn out badly unless you outlive it. We have to sell something to make money. We don't have to sell everything we get our hands on, but we have to create profit. You don't create profit by borrowing money. Third way to lose is to make promises you can't keep. If you don't make promises you can't keep, you got none to keep. We don't have to make promises we can't keep. We tell people like it is. We tell them what we can do and what we can't do and why we can't do it. And we make it crystal clear. And we put it in writing to make sure that we have a meeting of the mind so that we don't have comebacks later because people accuse us of making false promises. When we do that, when we level with the folks we're dealing with, you'll find it much easier to deal with the ones who want to deal with you because you'll instantly screen on the ones out that are going to give you the most grief. If you find the right people to work with, you won't have to make them promises. We will not guarantee their payments. We don't know when the loan will be paid off. And we will not refinance their property under any circumstances. Therefore, we don't tell them we will. If we don't tell them we will, we don't ever have to keep our promise. That and many others that you can unwillingly make in the effort to get a deal done. I would rather you not do the deal than make promises you can't keep. We do not have to do anything that's illegal, immoral, or unethical to buy all the houses and make all the money you want anywhere in North America. And if you think you do, please do not use my name. You did not learn it from my system. People get what they want out of the deal, or they will not do the deal. You will get what you want, or you will not do the deal. These two forces can come together with a meeting of the minds without you making promises that you can't keep. There are 4 ways to profit in the world of buying and selling or quick-turning houses. We're going to discuss 2 of them in our system today, touching on a third one, which is retailing. There's wholesaling. Number 1, the junker business, the art of buying and flipping junkers without ever taking title. We discussed that in the Ugly House cash flow system and in the quick turn real estate school. Wholesaling is one of the fastest ways to make money there is. Find junker, get a piece of paper signed by seller, flip contract to buyer, get check. Don't buy a house, don't touch a house. Don't raise money, don't hire contractors, don't go to banks, no costly entanglements, no time delays. You're in, you're out to get a check for $10,000 or more. It's a great business, but not up for discussion during this system. Retailing, the art of finding that junker, fixing that junker, then selling that junker to cash buyer usually. A lot of money in retailing. Rehabbing is commonly referred to it. Same junker, except now we take on the responsibility of finding the money, closing it, hiring contractor, firing contractor, hiring new contractor, getting contractor to do work, getting new contractor to clean up contractor's work. Then when contractor gets out, getting somebody to come clean up behind the contractor after they're done. And that's, of course, assuming that we can get the contractor ever to what we would consider done. And then we find the buyer, get them a loan, find the lender, get them qualified, and get them to the closing table. There's a big check in that process if you bought it correctly as you're trained in the other system. It's a process that you will not do in a week or 2 or 3. It takes weeks to buy and rehab and flip a house. It takes days to wholesale a house. Either and both are good parts of our business. Both of those are the ugly house business, the junker business, houses that need renovated. And today we're in the pretty house business with number 3 and number 4, getting the deed and options. Getting the deed, a millionaire maker. Getting people to give us their homes. If we take over their debt, leave the loan in their name, then they give us free equity in a beautiful home, in beautiful neighborhoods all across the land that need little or no work. The pretty house business. Houses that need no rehab, maybe a little cleanup, nothing major. Free equity for the taking. The debt comes with a house. We don't have to go raise capital in most cases, as you do in the ugly house business if you're a retailer. The pretty house business is a lot faster than retailing, certainly not faster than wholesaling. Both have their advantages and disadvantages, but the pretty house business is where the majority of the money is made in our systems today, and in fact, in most systems that involve real estate investors across America. Some start in a business and they think buying junkers is the only way. They're wrong. Some buy junkers and don't buy anything but junkers and spend their whole career buying junkers. Unfortunately for them, they're walking over the dollars to get to the dimes, and they're going through the business with blinders on. They don't see the real money because they're so focused on the nickels. There's a lot of money to be made with junkers, but there's only so many junkers. And there's a lot more pretty houses. Thus the birth of this system. And then there's options. Options, a beautiful world of options. Get a contract to buy and sell and get the difference. Option to house for price A, sell it for price B, and get a great big fat check with almost no risk. We're going to cover the world of options because it's important. It becomes one of the offers we can make when properly placed on the proper project with the proper seller. We need it in our arsenal of tools because there's going to come times when we're going to use it. It's not going to be our number 1 tool, but it's going to be a very nice tool to use when the time is right. Our number 1 tool by far is going to be getting the deed. Sounds like I made a case for not doing ugly houses. I did no such thing. I made a case that most of the money is in the pretty house business for 3 very good reasons. Number 1, when you're dealing in junkers, you're dealing with small checks. Small checks, small checks. And dealing in pretty houses, you're dealing in larger checks because you're dealing in higher priced properties. Higher priced properties get larger checks. They don't require any more risk, time, money, or resources. They just produce larger checks. And I have a motto, the more dollars you wallow in, the more stick to you. And I learned a long time ago it doesn't take any more time to make more than it does to make less. So, arbitrarily, you get to focus on making more. Second reason, in the junker business, you only get 1 check, and you're done. In the pretty house business, you may get more than 1 check, especially when you're getting the deed. Money today, money monthly, and money on the back end. Constant paydays and consistent paydays. Multiple streams of income from the single deal you've done. Do the deal once, keep getting paid. Not true with options, certainly true with getting the deed. More streams of income you have, the more you get paid, the better I like it. So that's true with pretty houses. And thirdly, probably 25 times more pretty houses where you live than there are ugly ones. So the pond is bigger, so we got to make sure we know how to fish in that pond. People ask me all the time, well, if that's the case, where do I start? Pretty houses or ugly houses? The answer is you start by letting people know you're in the business of buying houses. If the first person that calls you got a junker, you're in the ugly house business. First person call you got a pretty house, you're in a pretty house business. The next call you get could change the business you're in today. In reality, we're all in the real estate business. So I want you to be able to take whatever comes at you, pretty or ugly, Free and clear, leveraged to the max and then some. Over-leveraged even. North, south, east, west. Low-priced, high-priced. In foreclosure, not in foreclosure. Payments in arrears, payments current. 1 mortgage, 2 mortgages, 3 mortgages. Free and clear are lean to the hilt. Over-leveraged with liens and judgments or none. Whatever comes at you. North, south, east, west, in any area in the country. Find a way to get the seller out. If they're willing to work with you, get the buyer in and get a great big check based on what you know, not on what you spent, not on what you borrowed, not on the risk you took, but based on what you know. When you do, you're a transaction engineer and one of my trained assassins, and among the elite few in the country who really understand the business of real estate. Most do not. Many think they do, and many are doing well with a misguided assumption that they really get it. Those who really get it spend time at it, they spend work at it, and they actually get people calling them with all kinds of different properties, and they make it work if there's a workable deal there, and they force themselves to become transaction engineers, and nobody will do that with less than a year or two working at it. Our function here is to try to get as many checks as we can coming in the pretty house business without knowing everything there is to know. There's only a few ways you're going to buy properties that comprise 80% of your business, and we're going to go through those. And hopefully by the time I'm through, everybody will be able to recognize a deal from a dud and instantly see how we profit. Because I know from experience that many deals get lost because you can't see the light at the other end of the tunnel. Heck, you can't even see the opening for the tunnel, much less the light at the other end. When you can see how to get through that tunnel and see how that profit check's coming at you, then you will see how to structure the offer going in to get at that profit check. And only until then will you clearly understand the opportunity and be able to take advantage of it. Because until that happens, you let that opportunity go, whether it be intentional or unintentional. You look for an excuse not to move forward. You find ways to kill deals rather than make deals because it's easier. And human nature is always looking for the easier way. But this much I know. You're never going to make a nickel from a deal you don't do. So our job is to work harder on doing the deals instead of undoing them. Let's start by understanding what subject to means. Because it's a word you're going to hear a lot nationwide. Subject to is a phrase. It simply means that you're taking title to a property and taking over the underlying debt. You're not assuming it. You will either take a debt subject to, which means you're taking it over, making payments, but the debt stays in the seller's name, or you will assume it, which means you're applying to the lender to qualify to put yourself in the position of that seller and release that seller from liability. When you assume a debt, you exchange the seller's liability for your liability. Dumb move. Not in my world. Never. There are no exceptions. When you take over debt subject to, it does not show on your credit report because it is not your debt. When you take debt subject to, there's nobody who can tell you when you've had enough or when it's time for you to quit applying because there's nobody to apply to. There's no committee that approves you taking over a debt subject to. There's no process you have to go through, and your credit is totally irrelevant because there's no one to check it. When the seller leaves the loan in their own name, they're accepting the responsibility that loan might not get paid, and if they don't accept it, you're not buying the house. And they will accept it in writing. And if they're not willing to accept it, you're not going to buy that house unless you're willing to pay cash for it. Of course, the biggest hurdle for most people getting into the business is why would anybody do that? So we're going to cover that and see if we can't dig deep into why people do just exactly that by the thousands nationwide, day in and day out. In our world, we will take hopefully millions of dollars worth of debt over subject to and not go down to the bank and borrow any of it. personally guaranteeing it. You see, there is no limit how much debt you can take subject to. There is certainly a limit how much you can personally borrow. Well, what about the due on sale clause? I heard that was bad. Well, it's not bad. It's the best thing that ever happened to us. It is good. The due on sale clause is part of the Garn-St. Germain Federal Depository Institution Act of 1982. That's the act that actually gave teeth to the due on sale clause, and it also had exclusions in there that prohibit the loan being called due in certain circumstances, such as when you put a property into trust for estate planning purposes. The due on sale clause is nothing more than a paragraph within a mortgage or a deed of trust that says, if you transfer ownership of the property subject to, in other words, if you transfer the ownership of this property and someone doesn't come in and assume my loan and qualify to me and suck up to me or pay me off, then I have the right to call the entire loan due and make you pay it. That's called a due on sale clause. In fact, on the next page is a Fannie Mae due on sale clause. You'll find that in mortgages that have anything to do with government-backed or government-purchased debt. It's a very, very intense due on sale clause, and you're not going to get around it, and there's no tricky games going to keep that clause from not applying. If the seller transfers ownership to you in any way, shape, or form, including in a land trust, you have violated the due on sale clause. Oh my. Now what you need to understand is you've broken no law. The due on sale clause is not a law. It's a paragraph within a mortgage. The only one you have offended is the lender, not the law. You've violated a tenement of a mortgage or a deed of trust. Now the lender can call the loan due if they choose. Will they choose? Probably not. They haven't chosen in the last 600 or 700 of them I've done. But if you're just getting these CDs, and this is the first time you've listened to this, and you go get a deed subject to, you're probably going to be the test case. The very first one they call due. Because it's you. And you're special. Banks hate real estate. The last thing they want is a property. They want payments. They want money. Banks are in the money business. They're not in the real estate business. Contrary to conventional wisdom from some people who actually think they want to take properties back because they make money at it. Nothing could be further from the truth. For a bank to take back a property is like them wanting some disease. When a bank takes back a property, it turns into a non-performing asset. When somebody's making a payment, it's a performing asset. Non-performing assets decrease the amount of money the bank can lend by government standards, by government mandate. The Resolution Trust Corporation in the mid-'80s was formed to take over failing banks because their non-performing asset ratio got out of control. Banks cannot own too much real estate or they literally will be taken over by the federal government. They need to get it in and get it out as fast as they can. Is it in their best interest to protect their shareholders and get the biggest bang for the buck they can? Yes. They've got enough foreclosures on their hands without worrying about creating one because somebody actually violated a paragraph in the due on sale clause. As long as the banks are getting payments, they will most likely accept those payments. Could they call it due? Yes. Will they call it due? No one knows for sure. But if they call it due, does it affect your credit as the buyer? It does not, because you're not buying a house unless the seller signs as I call it, a CYA letter, which I'll get to here in just a second, clearly acknowledging that they understand that the bank will call it due, and they accept the risk. Well, why would a seller do this? The answer, peace of mind. Some won't. Most won't. Your job, find the people who have houses for sale by getting them to call you most of the time. Getting a few facts, analyzing the facts quickly, and then almost instantly getting to the point to whether the seller is interested in allowing you to buy the property subject to or not. Some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. We're going to be dealing with the minority, not the majority. And when we get into the pre-screening section, I'm going to drive that point home crystal clear. Most of the people who call you with a house for sale will not sell it to you under your terms. It's a good thing, because we wouldn't know what to do with all of them. Some of them will. And it only takes 1, 2, or 3 houses a month for anybody in America to make more money than they could ever spend or make working on any job for any corporation. It only takes a few houses a year to create financial independence and wealth beyond your wildest expectations or dreams, especially when you compare it to what you've been doing for the rest of your life up till now, swapping hours for dollars. Can you buy houses with due on sale clauses? Yes, under the following conditions. The seller is aware and signed off on that the loan can be called due, and that you're not assuming it. And that you get a statement from the seller called a CYA letter, and that you have little or no money invested and you haven't guaranteed the loan or put yourself in a position of loss unless you so choose to do so. That CYA letter is on the next page. It's called Letter of Agreement and Addendum. Notice nowhere up there does it say CYA letter. Okay. Which stands for what, class? Cover your assets. Correct. It says use this if payments are current. You see there's 2 CYA letters. One with payments current, one with payments in default. When we get to the one in default, we'll cover it for you. This is a very simple statement. It couldn't be easier to read, easier to understand. It says, I've been made aware that my loan on my property at 1233 Main Street contains a due on sale clause, which means the lender has the right to call the entire loan due upon transfer of title. Now, who could not understand that? I understand the loan will stay in my name till it's paid off or assumed by a future buyer. I'm aware that the above buyer has no intentions of assuming said loan, that no promise has been made to me that the loan will be assumed or paid off. I agree to hold harmless buyer or assign shown on the attached agreement or any future buyer in the event the loan is called due or goes into default. Now look, I don't know how to make it any more clear than that. Signed seller. If you do not get a CYA letter signed when you take a property subject to, my suggestion to you is don't take the property subject to. And since I'm going to adamantly insist that your attorney closes this for you, all you got to do is make sure that that or some derivative of it is in his normal closing documents, and you won't even have to worry about it. You, however, are under the obligation to make sure the seller knows you're not assuming their loan before they even get to that attorney to sign the paperwork. If you just tell it like it is, and we're going to get there, and quit worrying about what they're going to say, because they're not going to say anything, and be able to answer any measly little objections that come at you, and then are able to pre-screen the people you should be dealing with and whack the rest, you will find that when you go out to get people's homes, it's not going to be an issue that they're leaving the loan in their own name and that you're not assuming it or that the bank is calling a loan due. It's not a matter of talking them into it. It's a matter of pre-screening the right prospects to begin with and let them talk you into it. Very critical point of our business that some people just don't get. Why would anybody leave a loan in their own name and give you free equity? I don't know. Let's just find out here. One, they don't care about their credit. It's already shot. Nothing you can do about it. You didn't ruin it. They ruined it. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, in case I forget it later, when somebody has been served a foreclosure notice, There's nothing you can do to fix their credit or save their credit. It's gone. The minute they are served, the foreclosure goes on their credit report, not the date of the sale. Do not go into someone's home and say, I'm going to save your credit. You're not going to save their credit. Remember, don't make promises you can't keep. They need debt relief more than a guarantee payment will be made. Debt relief is the number one motivator for people to deed you their house and walk away. Debt relief which leads to peace of mind. The cash you give them now is more important than the fear you won't make their payment. Sometimes you will be giving these folks cash. Not much, but enough to satisfy their current needs, to scratch their itch now. They've given up on getting their equity because the house is not sold and it's not real money to them. People don't give away equity, they exchange it for peace of mind. Equity is of little importance to someone who can't see that light at the end of the tunnel and don't know how they're going to get that check. Folks, I'm here to tell you that I have received, with students nationwide, several $100 million worth of free equity in the last couple of years alone. Free equity is easy to get. All you got to do is ask for it, but you got to ask the right people. You will have no trouble getting free equity in single-family houses. They need a fast, easy out for numerous reasons and simply can't wait for a normal sale. In other words, they got to go and they got to go now. Have you ever had to go now? When you got to go, you got to go. Or at least they think they got to go. They inherited the house and the loan is a deceased relative's name and they could care less whether you make the payments or not. They're in foreclosure and about to lose it anyway, or they know they're headed there. And you're going to run across some of those as well. Are you taking advantage of these folks by getting the deed? No. They're going to make a decision concerning that house. All you can do is help them decide and give them a choice. You disclose the facts. Up to them to decide what they want to do with those facts. If you don't buy their house, someone else will soon. Probably do worse deal than you'll ever do. Or they'll let it go into foreclosure. You are not harming anyone. And again, you will do nothing illegal, immoral, or unethical. And you will get it in writing. And if they don't want to do it, that's just fine. Remember, you're only working with the minority. The key, however, is to get rid of the majority before you ever have a conversation in their home. You're not going to visit the majority of homes. You're going to visit the minority. And when you visit them, you know you can buy them before you leave your desk, if you want them. Can I sell houses with owner financing with due on sale clauses? The answer is yes, you can. You can sell houses all day long with owner financing. As soon as we figure out what that means and the tools to do it with, around due on sale clause loans under one condition. And that is that the buyer is fully aware that there's an underlying loan that has a due on sale clause in it. And that's a simple disclosure that your closing agent will insist that they sign. You don't even need to worry about it. I put one in here for you. You'll probably never see it in live documents because your closing agent has surely got a better one. Because they're not going to close a owner financing device that wraps around a subject to loan without disclosing to the buyer. However, if they don't have any such disclosure, you got one here that they can use. And you will not be closing a sale with seller financing anyway. So you don't even need to worry about doing the paperwork. They're going to do it for you. So you can rest easy tonight.